So ladies, we all have these technical difficulties when it comes to electronics. My heavens, I am not the best with electronics, and we're going to do our best today. I'm so used to one-on-one work. So those that don't know me, I think almost all of you know me already. I'm the quiet one in the group, in our chat group, but I've had the privilege of connecting on a personal level with a lot of you privately through private chats and voice notes. So I think a lot of you know me already. I do psychotherapy, employee wellness, life coaching, health and wellness type of consultations. And the aim of my practice is to, okay, she hasn't made me host yet. The aim of my practice is to focus on natural solutions, finding natural ways of tackling difficulties or health issues or mental health issues. I do believe that I'm one of the few mental health professionals that focus more on natural, and I'm not quick to rush to allopathic or medications. I don't really like that. Kia, can you make me host, please? I just need to share my screen.
Nicollete, I am really struggling. I'm trying to get there now.
Okay. Okay, so what I'll do, Kia, you just let me know once it's ready. I will start talking. You know why? There's a lot of information that we can cover without having the screen on. Now, the brain is what excites me. I'm passionate about it. And I'll tell you why, is because when you study the brain in-depthly,
Nicollete, your screen is on. You can share screen.
Thanks, yeah. For me, it makes me so much closer to God, actually. The brain, the organ is the most phenomenal organ we have. Well, we're going to get into that, but it really brings God's wisdom, God's knowledge in creating this organ in our bodies. He's given a brain to us. It blows my mind. Okay, so today we want to talk about how we can actually renew our mind, renew our brain. Our brains go through trauma almost regularly. It's become the norm now. And sometimes we even suffer trauma without realizing we've suffered the trauma. So I want to teach you and educate you and help you learn how we can renew our brains, how we can change our patterns of thinking and use it to our benefits. People think that it's easy to change your patterns of thinking. It's not. It's actually not. It's quite difficult. It takes practice. Like any skill, it's a skill and it takes practice. So now the objectives in this talk, I want us to understand this term neuroplasticity. Okay, it's not a term that it gets thrown around a lot. It's one of my most favorite words because of what it means and what's behind it. And I want us to understand that so that should we hear it or should we want to Google and study it further, you know what the term means, and then also negative thinking patterns. And then practically, I want us to learn 4 rules to overcome any bad things or trauma that might happen to you in life. I want us to learn how to deal with a toxic situation or toxic people in your personal life or even at work. So this is applicable personal and workspace. And then at the end, we're going to learn 5 steps. So first we're going to learn 4 rules, then we're going to learn 5 steps to deconstruct, to teach you the deconstructive process when we want to change our thought patterns, to avoid becoming toxic or negative ourselves. Okay, so I don't know if you want to have a little notepad ready just to jot down these little points as we go. Now I've put this on, woohoo, plasticine, Play-Doh. Who remembers this as a child? I still love it. Okay, excellent for kids with sensory issues. But I've put this image here because I want us to view the brain like Play-Doh and plasticine, something that we can mold and shape. Now, what's the meaning? of neuroplasticity. It's such a word that sounds like someone's performing brain surgery. Well, you can perform that brain surgery on yourself, okay? So it refers to the physiological changes in the brain that happens as a result of our interactions with our environment. Now, your environment has people, it has pets, it has noise, it has everything. So the results of these interactions in your environment, from the time the brain begins to develop in the womb, in utero, until the day we die, the connections among the cells in our brains reorganize in response to our changing needs. So depending if something changes in your environment, how amazing is it that the cells, the connections of the cells can reorganize to adapt? Now, this dynamic process allows us to learn from and adapt to different experiences. Now, this is the part where it just the skill or the possibility of our brains being able to do this is what blows my mind, that God had the wisdom to create this, and that the brain can change and adapt. Like, it's like, wow, it is like, wow. Your brain is an extraordinary organ. It's not like a computer. A computer needs continuous updates or downloads, software, hardware changes. You know, and people love computers and think computers are like the most wonderful invention. But our brain supersedes that. Our brain doesn't need hardware changes, software. It's able to do that naturally. It's able to grow different pathways. Now, your neural pathways look like a tree. Okay, and some illnesses and some traumas and some diseases can actually mesh these pathways and damage them. But your brain is able to grow new pathways. Think of a tree and new branches growing. So when we learn something new, it helps us create these new branches, these new connections between our brain neurons, which we're going to get into just now. So we learn to rewire our brains to adapt to new circumstances or new experiences. And this happens daily without you realizing it. But there are things we can do to encourage it or speed it up and hone in on that skill. Now, Dr. Caroline Leaf, you can take note of her name. She is one of the first in the neuroplasticity field to study and share with us how the brain can change via neuroplasticity. These are just some of her books, but if you Google her name, all her stuff, her work will come up. She's amazing. She's one of my favorites. Now, let's go. I'm going to go straight into negative thinking first, okay? The power of bad. Now, we know that just as much as good has power, bad or evil has power. All right. So before we discuss renewing our mind, I want us to understand the power of bad. So research has proven when your mind spots something negative or sees something negative in your environment, it puts off an alarm bell. It sends off these alert sensors, and then your mind zones in and hones in and focuses on that. So we've got to learn to not always focus on the bad, which we're going to learn now. And this is just a practical example. You're out in public, your eye catches this guy with a knife in the corner running. Maybe he's got a knife running. Immediately, that's an alarm bell. Danger, danger. And you focus on that. You know, we don't know why the guy was running. We live in South Africa. Immediately, it's going to go to the negative. But we don't know the reason behind it. So this is just an example of how your mind zones in, goes and focuses on that. Right, we're going into the rule of 4. Okay. Now, this is a general rule that we even teach in therapy. Is it helps us to eliminate bad or overcome the bad one step at a time. So, example, if someone at work or someone in your family, these people are suffering family politics right now. If someone says one nasty or mean thing to you. You're going to go home, you're going to think about it, you're going to mull it over in your head, you're going to turn it over, you're going to wonder why, what if, how, who, tomorrow, next week, right? But we're going to think about that one thing that happened, the negative talk or action that happened in the day, instead of all the other positive things that happened in the day, or the other positive things that people said to you during the day. Our brain zones in and hones in on that one negative. So once for every one negative behavior or statement that's made to you in a day, I want you to focus on 4 positive things that happened, or 4 positive things that someone said to you as well. And that's basically the rule of 4. So for every 1, you must come up with 4. Now, brain plasticity is also known as neuroplasticity. It's a term that refers to the brain's ability. Now, that's a key part. It's an ability to change and adapt as a result of experience. When people say that the brain possesses plasticity, we're not saying that the brain is like a plastic material. Neuro refers to the neurons, the nerve cells that are the binding blocks or building blocks of your brain and your nervous system. And plasticity refers to the flexibility. So again, and that's why I put that image of Play-Doh, plasticine, how you can stretch it and mold it and build what you want. For me, it just fits perfectly with the term. Now with kids, it's a little bit different because kids' brains are so much different to adults. So there's 4 types of neuroplasticity that we can observe and we've seen in kids. The first one is adaptive. And these are changes that occur when children practice a new special type of skill, allowing the brain to adapt to functional or structural changes in the brain. So when a child has an injury, think of a sports injury. Okay, the brain will adapt. There might have been a physical blow to the head. The brain will adapt in that situation. Then you've got impaired neuroplasticity, where this means the changes that are occurring in the brain are due to genetics or a disorder, an acquired disorder. So whether it's something like ADHD or something like Tourette syndrome, that's impaired neuroplasticity. And then we've got excessive plasticity, where your brain reorganizes new maladaptive pathways that can cause disability. So it's growing and changing at such a fast rate and building the branches at such a fast rate that it actually can cause harm or disability or disorder. So that's excessive neuroplasticity. Then we've got plasticity that makes the brain more vulnerable to injuries, harmful neural pathways that are formed, and it makes injuries more likely, more probable, and more impactful. Now the benefits. Okay, so 7 benefits that neuroplasticity has on the brain. Think of these people that recover from strokes. That is serious brain trauma, serious, but people recover from it. How remarkable is it that your brain can recover from a stroke? That is neuroplasticity. Recovery from traumatic brain injuries. Think of these horrible car accidents where everything's mangled. There is head trauma, there is a brain injury, and people recover from that. Now, the ability to rewire functions in the brain. Right now, if an area that controls one sense is damaged, the other areas pick up and will either pick up or slack. Now, how many times have you seen or heard people will say that your eyesight may be diminished, but your hearing got so much sharper, or your taste got better? So that's where the brain is rewiring. It's redirecting to make another sense a little bit stronger because the one sense has diminished or suffered. And then losing function totally in one area, in one function may enhance another function in a different area of the brain. So that's also what I've just spoken about. If one sense is lost, the others becomes heightened also. So the brain adapts, rewires, redirects that information or those those signals. It redirects it. And then enhanced memory abilities. We are only, I mean, you get people who are incredible. I know a lady personally who memorizes number plates of cars randomly on the road. For me, that's an amazing memory ability. I can't remember 10 cars' number plates, and she can. Now, and that's an enhanced memory ability, and that's because of neuroplasticity for her. A wide range of enhanced cognitive abilities and more effective learning, which is important for our teenagers and our kids, especially varsity students. We need to hone in and exercise this neuroplasticity to help improve memory and learning. Now, how can we apply neuroplasticity to get these benefits that I've just spoken about? How do we rewire our brain with neuroplasticity? Intermittent fasting. Now, everyone thinks intermittent fasting is just about losing weight or health. It's not. Intermittent fasting, done the right way. Actually, maybe one day we should organize a talk of it. I've done another talk on it. It's quite a big topic where we do intermittent fasting to heal defective or broken cells. You can actually fix a cell from the nucleus of the cell with intermittent fasting. People have cured cancer with intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting increases synaptic adaptation, promotes neuron growth, it promotes new cellular growth, improves overall your cognitive function. You feel like a pencil that's been sharpened. Your brain is sharp, speedy, clear, and it also decreases the risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, that type of thing. So intermittent fasting is a big one to look into. And then traveling, how much fun. That exposes your brain to novel or new stimuli and new environments. And it opens up new pathways and activity in the brain. And you've heard people say, oh, the travel bug has got me. It's the newness and your mind it expands. Your mind is broadened because of the new pathways that develop. Then using mnemonic devices, this is to do with memory training. It can enhance the connectivity in the prefrontal parietal network. So prefrontal, that's your frontal, and then just on the sides here's your prefrontal. And it prevents some age-related memory loss. Now, if you think of older people that can actually operate a cell phone, that's a new kind of a mnemonic device because it's got a system. The way you operate a cell phone is quite systematic. You got to press this, you got to press that, you got to do it in order to get to that part of the application or whatever it is. So the old people, those are quite sharp. If you think of old people that can operate a cell phone, they're actually quite sharp at it. Or those people that operate laptops, like for Zoom meetings and getting in. It's not your average. A lot of older people can't. I'm talking probably 75, 80 and up. A lot of old people can't because their brains are not able to build on or develop these new pathways. And then learning a musical instrument. Definitely, 100%. You are learning to read music. You're building a branch, another branch that didn't just happen overnight. It may increase connectivity between brain regions and help form new neural networks. And then non-dominant hand exercises. Most of us are right-handed. It's important to do hand exercises for your left hand. These can form neural pathways and strengthen the connectivity between neurons because we have to focus. We have to concentrate when we're doing it because it's our non-dominant hand. Reading fiction, getting lost in that book, it increases and enhances connectivity in the brain. Expanding your vocabulary, learning a new language, it activates the visual and auditory processes as well as memory processing. So there's three areas it touches. Being creating artwork, being being creative, enhancing the connectivity of the brain at rest, default. Now, this is what we call default mode network, where your brain's at rest. It's your default mode. Okay, so it enhances the connectivity of the brain while it's resting. We think when we're not thinking about anything or we're sleeping that the brain is resting. For some people, it's not. It's busy, it's working, it's processing. And this can boost introspection. It can boost your memory, your empathy, your attention, and your focus. So get creative and practice that art, regardless of what it is, painting, drawing, whatever is considered art for you, practice it. Dancing. Now, we're not talking just about crazy dancing in your lounge. We're talking about actually learning an actual dance, either routine or dance style. So example like line dancing, you're focusing, you have to be in line with everyone else. There's certain steps to follow. Salsa dancing, everyone, it looks beautiful, it looks nice. I always thought I've queen dancer, but when I got into salsa dancing, I realized I don't know very much because it's difficult. You have to focus. And when you finished a training session of a decent dance and a systematic dance pattern, your brain feels like it's actually worked, it's exercised, because it did. And then sleeping, a lot of pastime for people that feel overworked from the week especially. It encourages learning retention through the growth of the dendritic spines that act as connections between the neurons, and it helps transfer information across those networks, across the cells. So sleeping is also healing, and it helps. Now, you hear me talking about a synapse. I wanted to just put a picture here because it's very important to have this image in your head. Okay, now if you can see my mouse on my screen, this blank area here is called the synapse. This white blank area. Okay, now these little balls here are neurotransmitters. Can you see they are clumps or cells of neurotransmitters? This area is where the neuroplasticity happens. And this is the most important area that we want. And this synapse is right here at the base between our spine, the connection between the spine and the base of your brain, right? So that is where our chance or our gap to change anything we need to in the brain from the body, that's where it occurs, at that important part, that important level, that space, the white space. So I just want us to have that image and know where it's located. Right, so now we're going to look at the phases of neuroplasticity. So after a trauma has hit, this is how it happens, okay? Immediately after the trauma, the neurons begin to die off, and cortical inhibitory pathways are decreased. This phase lasts 1 or 2 days, and it may show up or uncover secondary neural networks that have never been used or been really used. Because in that initial phase of, let's say, impact, okay, let's work with an image of impact, an accident or something like that. In those first 1 or 2 days, it's trauma to the brain. Either a new undiscovered pathway is going to have to come in and compensate for the injury and be used, and you don't even know that that side of your brain was functional or functioning. And let me go to the other image, just hang on. Right, so you can see here, there's what's called a dendrite or a clump of neurons, right? These have receptors and neurotransmitters. They have to travel through the white gap, through the white space, the synapse, to get to the brain. So these are the things that actually start dying off after an injury or bad trauma to your head. They actually die off. Then if these die off, there's nothing to send signals to the brain. So I just wanted to have the image again so we know what we're talking about. Okay, so that's immediate, right? It dies off. Then we've got, after a few days now, we hope some healing has happened. The activity of these cortical pathways change from inhibitory to excitatory. So from being inhibited, they get excited now, and new synapses are formed. new white space pathways are formed for both the neurons and the other cells. So those now that are kind of floating around, let's go back to the image again. So these neurons that are floating around because all this has been damaged, they are going to get recruited and pulled in to travel along the new pathways, the new synapses that are formed, right? And they will replace the damaged or dead cells and facilitate healing. Now, this is also the part where intermittent fasting works really well, because intermittent fasting helps grow new cells and facilitate the dying off of the old or damaged cells. Okay, so anyway, this process is happening mentally, it's happening in your body, happening in your brain. Now, after a few weeks, so you're possibly lying in hospital after a bad accident. Now, after a few weeks, new synapses continue to appear. So they continue, they're still carrying on. After a few days, we go into a few weeks, these synapses are still continuing to appear, and remodeling the brain is in full swing after a trauma. Now, this is the time when rehabilitation and therapy can help the brain to learn some helpful new pathways. So let's say the car accident, a person can't walk. Okay, that part of the brain's been damaged. They've laid in hospital. This is why they give them a few weeks to start physiotherapy or other types of therapies to start learning to walk again, because those pathways have had time to build up again and reform, so you can learn to walk again. How amazing. Absolutely. Now, this part. So, as most of you know, I'm the crazy oil lady. I've engaged with a lot of you about it. It's not just about essential oils. It's about the effect the molecules of the oils have on the brain. And I've put this image here so we can understand just how deep the oil molecules go. Now, this is your whole, we call this the olfactory center of your brain. When you inhale or you sniff in any smell, let's say you sniff cinnamon or clove, sometimes it brings back memories of Granny's kitchen or mom's baking or walking into a favorite bakery. I want you to see, and I deal with a lot of trauma and trauma cases. Let's go to the negative one. Let's talk about a rape case. A lady that has suffered that will never forget the smell of her perpetrator. She could walk into Edgar's example, where they have all those fragrance counters, and her nose will pick up that one cologne or whatever he used, and it will trigger all those traumatic memories of what happened to her. So this is why we use smell, we use essential oils to help rewire and heal trauma in the brain, because it's that potent. Never mind the fact there's science with the hurt and the energy of the oil molecules that work with the body's energy. Never mind that. It's just the olfactory. So it goes, there's your olfactory bulb. Let's look at this image. There's your olfactory bulb, right? So you've sniffed it in, goes to your olfactory bulb, and it travels along. This system is called the limbic system. I like to think of it like the shape of a snake, and the reason is because it's our primal part of the brain, and it's the part where we have our, if you can say, animalistic instinct. That is where flight or fight, your raw emotion, your raw memory, that's where everything happens. And this is where the essential oils go straight to that part of the brain. Right. So that's with odor and smell. The other way we spoke about nerves and neurons and development. If you take a potent oil like frankincense, which is a biblical oil, you wonder why it was brought as a gift for baby Jesus, because it's one of the most valuable oils. Frankincense has the power to heal damaged nerve endings And I've seen it firsthand with scans right here in our hospital. I had a lady who had some damage, nerve damage here again at the synapse. We didn't know that that damage happened. I was treating her for pain. That's all I was doing, pain in her back. And she went to a GP center for a scan, and it just so happened the scan showed that her left arm was supposed to be paralyzed. And the doctor sat and asked her, but how come it's not? And they looked at history, looked at what she has been and still was taking, and she was taking some of my frankincense. And the doctor agreed that that's the only thing that healed the damaged nerve endings from her synapse, that saved her arm from being paralyzed. And that is the power. And this is why I've brought essential oils into my practice, and this is why I love it. I've been 7 or 8 years now, I think, that I've been using it. Never to turn back. Never to turn back. There's place for CBD oil as well, which is a whole nother presentation. Now, toxic people. What about exposure to toxic people? We deal with these people almost daily. There are negative, traumatized, abused people walking around us. All right. Now, Warren Buffett. This is a quote we're going to use, and we're going to deconstruct this because it has a lot of meaning behind it. You will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. The real power, true power, is sitting back and observing things with logic. True power is constraints. If words control you, that means everyone else controls you. Breathe and allow it to pass. Now, I want to break this quote up because we're going to dissect and use this knowledge. So the first part, you will continue to suffer. Okay. You are also damaging your brain the more time you spend on thinking about a toxic event or a toxic person that happened. The more you sit and you actually damage your brain because you're mulling it, you're turning it over. Researchers found that you're actually causing a neurochemical chaos in the brain, damaging the brain, setting you up for exposure to other mental health issues, other mental disorders like depression and cognitive issues. That these things like to decrease the ability to concentrate at work or at home with your kids, and it starts to make you feel a bit agitated. Now look at that. A researcher found neurochemical chaos in the brain just by sitting and mulling and turning over a negative phrase or event that happened. So you playing a part in damaging your brain. Just keep that thought at the back of your head. The next part of his quote says, true power is restraint. Restraint is the key in managing toxic situations. We know it takes two to ignite or exacerbate a volatile situation. Restrain yourself. It helps manage the whole situation. We should practice self-restraint, or what we call it self-regulation. So how do we do this? Before you react and cause even more damage, sit back and practice restraint. Restraint also applies in your thought life. The more you think about something, the more real it feels. The more you start to justify your assumptions, your thoughts about another person, that thinking is not necessarily true. So the more you think about things, the more you think it starts, oh, it's becoming clearer. It made sense why they did that or they said that. And it leads to bad judgment and resentment in our work relationships or your personal life relationships. The next part of that quote is, true power is in sitting back and observing with true logic. Now, always remember, you are in control. You're not under someone else's control unless you allow it. Instead of reacting, be quiet. Control your thoughts and emotions. You will have a lot more of a logical thought process about the situation after you've done that. You can't, now this is just an important thing to remember. You can't be given an offense. You take offense. So now people will say, oh, I'm sorry, I've taken an offense to what you said to me. You took it. You made the choice to take that offense. You were not given that offense. So a little tip is to ask yourself, do I want to take this into me? Do I want my energy to go in this direction? Do I want to feed my energy and plug my energy into this direction, this negative, toxic direction? It's a choice. So you got to step back and ask yourself, do I want this? Do I want to accept this into my being, into my body? Now, another part of the quote is, if words control you, then everyone controls you. Are you letting other people control you? If you walk around with the victim mentality, hurt, you're always upset, and you're telling everyone what everyone else done to you, oh, she did this, he did that, you're allowing their words to control you. You must remember that what they've said to you is done. They said it. You'll never change that. But by you keeping it and walking around with it and telling everyone, oh, this is how she hurt me, you're still allowing their words to have power over you and control you, even though it's done probably months ago. And you're giving them power. So rather see every toxic situation as an opportunity to learn from it and move on. So anything negative that happens, there's always a lesson. Always a lesson. What lesson can you take out of it? Take that lesson and move forward. And then breathe and allow things to pass. That's it. So this is now we're going to go into deconstructive, right? When you take a deep breath, you reduce the cortisol secreted in your mind. So you know that stress, it's a stress hormone, cortisol. So you know that whole, when you get angry or someone's done something bad to you, it's the whole flight or fight. Am I going to walk away and keep quiet, or am I going to stand there and fight this? When you start with that whole process, cortisol is fired off into your mind. It's a stress hormone. It's bad for us. Breathe in through your nose deeply and hold it for 4 counts. You can even try and do it now. You breathe in and hold and count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When someone says breathe, have this image in your head. Really, really breathe and hold it. Deep breaths, deep into your lungs. Recognize and name your reaction. Name the emotions that you're feeling. What are you feeling right now? Describe them to yourself. Now, sometimes it's good to take this process, this step, into a journaling exercise. For those of you who are on my Instagram social media, I'm actually in the middle now of a journaling prompt strategy where I'm sending out prompts every day to help teach people how to journal properly. Journaling, a lot of people find it overwhelming. They've got the book, now what? What do I write? What do I do? And that's why if you just save the posts on my Instagram, and when you're ready to use it, you've got prompts, you've got daily prompts to help you get into the practice of journaling. And we're doing it for 21 days because 21 days is how long it takes to form a habit, right? So name the emotions you're feeling. Describe them to yourself. Example, I feel attacked, I'm feeling hurt, and I'm feeling angry about that fact. Then you ask yourself, why are you feeling these emotions? Why are you feeling attacked? Answer yourself. Why are you feeling hurt? Answer yourself. Why are you angry and defensive? Answer yourself. Don't do it for too long, but just until the point when you should feel in control. It should happen fast, where you feel back in control again. It's like you're taking your power back. And just on this point, side note, always remember, when someone gets angry at you, 80% of the time it comes from a place of hurt. They hurt about something and they don't know how to express it or how to manage that emotion, so they retaliate with anger. Just always remember that. Okay, step 3, intentionally and deliberately separating the toxic emotions behind the words you're hearing or you're reading and the logic the logic of the words, or the logic of the part, taking the words apart. So you visualize them. Imagine toxic thoughts like a tree. And that's exactly what the toxic thoughts look like in your brain. A toxic tree with no leaves, no thorns, with thorns, but no beauty behind it. So it's one of those barren desert type trees with thorns on top of it. It's not a pretty picture. So you visualize the words as being this toxic tree. Visualize ripping the emotions off the toxic tree. Maybe the toxic emotions could, as I say, represent the thorns. Take off those thorns, take them off, and take the threats out of the words that have been used. I've put this picture in so you can see toxic thoughts. Look at that cloud. Look how you can see. If we could look into our brain, that's what we would see with toxic thoughts and negativity. It actually, and I'm wondering, I don't know if it's fact, but I'm wondering, is that where the phrase clouds your judgment comes from, because of this cloud? No, just a thought. Okay, now we focus on the words. Only focus on the words. See the words without emotion. Take emotion out of it. Just see the words. Then you'll be able to see the actual problem. Take the emotion out. Example, you can read the email with a clearer mind without toxicity. You realize what you could have done to have caused this kind of reaction. So you start taking some accountability for your part and offer suggestions maybe on resolution. And then this goes into the step 5, where you work out a solution in order to progress forward. Look at the words and work out how to respond back. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Respond and observe how the person responds back. Observe. Has your response provoked a different type of reaction to them, with them? We hope a positive one. This will probably lead to a discussion, which will lead to then solving the problem and then clearing out the misunderstanding. Both parties will benefit or can benefit without toxicity. So we negate and we stop the whole thing of spreading rumors around the neighborhood or the office. We don't discuss it with other uninvolved parties that have nothing to do with it. And then we stop fixating on the negative thought buildup in our minds. This all sounds easy to do. It's not, honestly, but practice can help you. Now, let's just put together a perspective of trauma. Everyone's idea of trauma differs. We don't think the same things about trauma. The topic is a vast topic. I can't get deeply into it. It's too big. And I'm just going to touch on certain areas of trauma because we're very cognizant as therapists, and we're very aware that what's going on in our country specifically and all over the world. Things are volatile. There's violence, there's negative stuff. And if I go too deeply into the trauma, it can actually re-trigger trauma in someone watching this presentation. So we're just careful with how we approach trauma. A definition in some context, trauma is a Greek word, actually. It means a wound. And it is a wound. It does not refer to the physical wound, but refers to a wound of a person's psyche. Psychological trauma can be caused by violent crimes such as criminal acts or GBH, grievously bodily harm, attempted murder, rape, cash in transit heist. Most of South Africans citizens are exposed either directly or indirectly to these types of crimes and our living conditions. Now, some people experience trauma firsthand. It's happened to them, or they've literally seen it in front of them happening. Others have been exposed to traumatic storytelling from friends and family. They relay what happened to them. And most people experience multiple traumatic events in South Africa. So let's get on the same page, right? Stress versus trauma. Let's look at the differences here. With stress, your body is constantly looking for a state of balance. With trauma, it's a sense of helplessness, loss of control. There's nothing I can do. With stress, your body experiences imbalance. So the body will always try and adjust to go back to its original state. Whereas trauma overwhelms a person's normal response mechanisms. They feel totally, they're out of control. They can't control it. Disequilibrium is referred to as stress, but various forms of trauma contribute to this with high levels, high stress levels, mean that a person is more easily traumatized. With stress, it's a response to external stresses placed on the body. So something comes from outside. With trauma, it's a response to an external event. And this influences your cognitive, your physical, and your affect. It's supposed to be affect. Unsatisfactory adjustment to stress. So we try and regulate with stress, but then we feel fatigued, exhaustion, and burnout. Now with trauma, they feel they cannot deal with the traumatic experience. They just probably bury it and carry it. And it lingers in your unconscious or your subconscious mind. That's the true thing about trauma, is you don't deal with it when it happens. You just kind of get over it, but you're carrying it with you. So just some examples: financial stress, family stress, job stress, project deadlines, having a new baby. But traumatic events are big. It's either death threats or actual death, passing. A lot of us have lost loved ones in this time. Car accidents, serious injuries, or witnessing or traumatic events, sexual violence, even media footage, we're going to get there, and violent crimes. Okay, so types of victims. What type of a victim have you been? A trauma victim. You get direct victims that have experienced or witnessed the incident directly. This includes watching unedited live news broadcasts of the traumatic events. This is exactly what's happening now on our South African news channels. And we are bombarded with it every single day if you watch the news every single day. It's your decision if you're going to watch these uncensored, these videos that come on Facebook and the social media, the really hectic ones that haven't been edited. Be careful of those. Be careful of watching those continuously. Stay informed, but limit your visual exposure to traumatic content. Then you've got the indirect victim, which hears about the incidents that can lead to psychological, emotional, and have a physiological response, meaning an actual response on your body. Indirect victims also include secondary or vicarious trauma. Now, the people who experience the trauma because they work with the cases, doctors, nurses, and those who work with the victims, the car accident victims. And us, the mental health practitioners who hear detailed storytelling of a traumatized client. It's not easy sometimes to listen to the fine detail of the cases that end up in my office. It's not. Now, what stages can you expect when you experience trauma? There's 3 phases of trauma. These phases don't have a pattern. They don't follow any strict pattern. They are determined by a person's resilience, a person's strength, the person's support structure, and direct or indirect exposure to the event. So these are the phases, okay? The impact phase. The last few seconds of the traumatic event to 3 days after the event, where your adrenaline levels are high. And I've just put there children, it's different for kids. And then your symptoms are disbelief. Like, you can't believe what just happened. You are numb, emotionally numb. You're disorientated. You scream or you cry or you're totally irrational. You can't think straight. So the impact phase, I think, is the correct term because it's impact. It's when it just hits you, the life shock hits you. Then you've got the recoil phase. Typically 3 days after the event. It should not be, this doesn't apply to ongoing traumatic events. So let's think of loss of a loved one. Okay, so it's not ongoing, it's happened, impact, the horrible news. So 3 days after the event, then you start having some symptoms of anger, guilt, sadness. You want to avoid places or TV shows or activities of the person that you lost. Other symptoms will have difficulty sleeping. You don't want to talk about it. Nightmares or funny thoughts that come into your head that you didn't actually welcome in. Then the reintegration phase is a few weeks after the event. Also, again, should not be ongoing events. The symptoms are the person begins to live with the trauma as a memory and ideally goes back to normal day-to-day mundane functioning, get back into the rat race. Other symptoms, you get people, they can't perform day-to-day duties. There's an impact on their work and their social life, and then that's when they need to seek some professional mental health. So impact phase, I learned visually. Impact phase and then recoil. Picture a child huddled up in the fetal position. But these are the symptoms and emotions you're going to feel. And then reintegration phase, getting back into society, day-to-day functioning. Now, how is all this information helping you? You're sitting and you're wondering, God, I'm listening to all of this, but why? So 50% of healing comes from psychosocial education. And this is what we are actually just doing right now. It's sharing education, psychosocial education. So with the current looting and the violent protesting we just had, you might have experienced, there's a lot of people that did experience trauma firsthand. And a lot of us have been victims of indirect exposure to these traumatic violent scenes. So our social media was bombarded with it. How to cope? Take control of your thoughts. Try and avoid rewatching stuff and re-traumatizing these broadcasts that they just repeat on every channel. Monitor your psychological symptoms and your behavior. You know yourself the best. You will be able to spot when there's a change. Like, I'm not feeling myself. Things at home are not even the same anymore. Monitor those changes. Incorporate these tips that we've shared to deal with your negative thinking that might come with the trauma. And employers, those that deal with the workforce, ensure that your staff feels physically and emotionally safe at work. We're getting this a lot now with the COVID pandemic, where those that have been working online at home, the employees want to open up offices and get them back into the physical space of the building. And they're feeling unsafe physically and emotionally because of the anxiety of going back to work. And then celebrate positivity. There's a nice page on Facebook called Rebuild South Africa, where people were cleaning up and they're offering help and support. It's a nice little positives page. I like that. And then seek help from a practitioner if you feel concerned. Always remember, you're in control, so you can seek help. That is a part of taking your control back. And release what's in your mind. Art therapy, storytelling, journaling. Get it out your mind. Get it out there on the canvas or in the journal. Just get it out. Even gardening is a really good one. Okay, so back to this Dr. Leaf. I like her, and this is just a quote from her. Exercise increases growth of brain cells. It helps boost the neuroplasticity, and it increases intellectual and cognitive function. So have better emotional intelligence at work and at home, better thought patterns, leading to happier work relationships. Another quote from her: the thought you are thinking right now is impacting every single one of the 75 to 100 trillion cells in your brain and your body at quantum speeds. We can't conceptualize a quantum speed. We can't. It's crazy. It's just crazy. But look at the cells. 75 to 100 trillion. Yeah, we can't. And then based on what we've learned today, I would say that this statement from her is powerful. Our own thoughts perform surgery on our brains with more precision than any neurosurgeon can, and that's the truth. We have that power. Okay, so what's currently happening in your life? Our mindset sets the tone for how we approach the events and circumstances of our life, which are often out of our control. So whatever you're facing in your personal life during the pandemic or in your career, I want to comfort you by reminding you of the content that you learned today. Remember, if it's not in your control, you can apply steps to choose how you're going to embrace it and react to it. So I tried to speed up, ladies. It was quite a long one. Let me just stop share. Yeah, and we're done. So I hope that you learned some stuff today, applicable stuff, practical stuff. I know it got a bit sciencey, but oh, thank you. I'm just reading the comments. Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, so that's it for the day. Any questions that you want to ask?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Nicollete. This was super. I didn't know what to expect, and I was very honest with you from the word go. When I asked you to come and share this moment with us, I knew the kind of work that you're in, and I knew your heart for the work that you're in. But as soon as I said, so what do we term your talk? What are we doing? All I want is to create a space and an opportunity for the women in our network or friends of the network to come and find some healing and ways to heal themselves. I think for me, the most important thing was to remind women that this is not the end. What we are experiencing, that the death that we are experiencing in our lives, the loss of work and income, the loss of businesses, and physical attacks and emotional and spiritual attacks that we are experiencing now, this is not the end. And I knew that the responsibility to stand up and continue, unfortunately, it first starts with us. We have to open our minds and our hearts to it, to say, I don't like what's going on in my life and I want to move on from it. But then I also know that at this point in time, we don't know how to do that because we are experiencing trauma like we have never experienced before. You know, I mean, for me, I realized that I'm hearing of death on a weekly basis. And this is death that wants me to be physically at the funeral or memorial service. And over and above that, I've got my own trauma to deal with and to overcome and to address. But how do I do it? What I know for sure is that I can do it. But how do I do it? What I know for sure is that if I'm still alive, if I'm waking up today, God's plan with my life is not done. There's still a reason why I'm alive. But then if I don't feel like getting out of bed, if I don't feel like opening my WhatsApp group, and I've got over 200 women that I feel obligated to engage with on a daily basis via WhatsApp. If I don't do that, then I'm not performing my godly duty and the assignment that God has put ahead of me. But how do I do it? There must be a way, and that is why I was very interested in having you come and speak to us, and I'm so grateful that we have made it happen. And I don't understand the emotions I'm feeling right now because part of me, Nicollete, wants to cry. Part of me wants to get off this meeting and go and understand what I'm feeling and what this has evoked in me for me to be feeling this way. What I know for sure, for a fact, and anybody that is part of Christian Women Business Network or has attended our sessions, what I know for sure is that God always gives us more than what we expect in our sessions. And maybe that is why I'm so emotional right now. Now, I have questions of my own, and I would like to invite everybody, whoever has a question, to please either raise your hand or put the questions in the comments. The first question that I want to ask you, before I ask the question, I want to say thank you, because I realize that most of the work that we have to do to overcome trauma is actually it's self-help, and it's self-healing, and it's taking care of the self. And as you were presenting, what I saw was peace. That everything that we do, everything that you're talking about, will lead us to peace. And it needs us to be in peace in order to get there. So I'm grateful for that. I've taken plenty notes. I have one question, if I may. Ronelle, I see your hand. Now, I've experienced a traumatic. I've had a traumatic experience, and I feel like it's extremely traumatic, and I don't know if I can get over it. Just this morning when I woke up and I was praying and I was thinking about it, my eyes welled up. Now, I also understand that as a child of God, testimony is a requirement. And I also appreciate and respect and honor the position that God has put me in, that I can reach so many people. And if this testimony is here, it must be given, it must be shared, it must be spoken. And then now you speak about if we overthink a situation, then we are damaging our own mind and cells. So now I feel that God has placed me, I have gone through the experience. I've learned more than I could have ever learned in whatever course or program, degree, whatever, but it's still painful and hurtful. And but I know that it's gonna heal more people if I tell the story. Now, if I write, okay, the book is written. If I publish it and I put it out there, I'm going to have to talk about it. I'm going to be invited to interviews whether I like it or not. I'm thinking I want to publish this book and not put my name on it. And it must just go wild and people must do with it as they like. I'm also scared of publishing the book and then inviting people into my trauma and not being able to help them out of my trauma. And my question is, what do I do then? What do I do then? And will I be hurting myself by retelling the story?
Okay, now, Kia, you are not your trauma. Okay, you've got to view your trauma as a black box. Now, men have this box in their brain we call the nothing box. And everyone that has a bad traumatic experience, we all have this part in our brain where the information gets stored. That's how we get over it. Okay. Have that black box. We're aware that it's there, but we don't have to live in it every day. In your case with the book publishing, you have to stick your hand into that box from time to time to deliver a talk or a speech or education about your book. But you are digging in for that time and you're going to come out again. You are not your trauma. Your trauma is a box on the side. So keep that in mind. There also, I can see that not enough time has passed after this trauma. It can take years. Think of PTSD. The guys that went into war, sometimes they only experience the trauma 60 years later. PTSD can happen at any time from 1 day, 2 days to 60, 70 years after. And let's say a trauma has happened to us this week, a bad one. We might think we're okay and we've gotten over it and we've healed. And next thing, 10 years later, flashbacks come, horrible thoughts and memories come. We have to relive it and rework through it. Trauma is not like a once-off. For some people it's once off, but for a lot of people it's not. You might have to rework through it and start again. But it's okay. It's you're never staying there. It's never stagnant. You can't be entrenched in it. Healing, as long as there's movement and going forward, healing is happening. Healing is taking place. So you might get ideas surrounding your trauma that you might want to talk about at another event. Don't keep those ideas here. Write them down, get them out your head, get them on the book. You don't want to forget them because you need them for business, but you don't want to keep it in you. It's not a part of you. So that's the advice that I will give you. Use it, but get it out, put it out on paper or a piece of artwork that will trigger the points you want to remember. But don't embrace it to the point where it becomes a part of your being. Because it's not you. It's an event that happened.
Thank you. I get that. Thank you very much. I get that. I am not my trauma. I think for me the exercise is to be, as you're saying, put your hand in there and take it out. I'm hoping that this is helpful for others too. Thank you so much.